story about a man named Calvin. Calvin with a K. And Calvin Bailey was a man who worked in a creative industry, and then he worked for several different people, and he tells a story like this. One day he got into the car with his boss. And the boss said, we're going to go for a ride, and they went for a drive, and they went for 10 miles. And he thought for sure they were already in the middle of nowhere. And then they kept going, and they went to 15 miles, and then 20 miles in this middle of nowhere. He said about 30 miles later, he found himself in what he calls nasty, wasted country. Nasty, wasted country. There in that nasty, wasted country was water, swamps, jungle, alligators. Anybody want to build a home there? Steve is selling, I'm sure. Nasty, wasted country. He recalls thinking to himself about his boss that he had to be out of his mind to go to such a place as this, so dirty, so low, so abandoned, and to see possibility. And he says, I looked at it and thought, this is nothing. There's nothing here. There's nothing here that's redeemable. There's nothing here worth anything. This is nothing. I've got water up to my knees. And he says, you couldn't have given me the land. 30,000 acres. 47 square miles of nasty, wasted country. And his boss, this crazy man, out of his mind, short of a full deck, having lost his marbles surely, looked out on this nasty, wasted land that nobody saw value in and said, I see something. I see purpose. I have a vision. I see a dream. I think there's something that could be here. And Calvin said, you've lost your mind. There's alligators and swamp. Nobody's out here for a reason. Well, that boss smiled at him and said, well, they will be. And they got back into the car, and he began to draw out the dreams of what would become Walt Disney World. One man who could look at nasty and wasted and could see beauty and magic and belief and the laughter of children and families and hope and dreams. And I'm so thankful that he did, because I love it there. I do. I love when you walk into Walt Disney World that you can't find a newspaper to save your life. There's not a television telling you about the news. And you walk in under this tunnel and it says, leave the world behind. Here in this place, a place of joy and rides and fun, I just like to sit in the grass outside the castle and just be in what was nasty and wasted. I think of the story about Zacchaeus. You know, the crowds thought he was nasty and wasted. This short man of structure, this sinner. Back then, the tax collectors were allowed to come after you and ask for your money that you owe the government, but they could ask for more, and if they could squeeze it out of you, it got to go into their personal pocket. So if Zacchaeus was technically really good at his job, then he would be the wealthy man that he was. But his wealth was built on all that he squeezed extra out of people who didn't have much to begin with. They saw him in this community as nasty and wasted. And here he was, knowing he wasn't liked, hearing about this Jesus, And he says, I got to climb this tree. I got to see this guy. And he had to climb this tall sycamore tree just to be able to see up over the crowds, to get a good view at this Jesus, this man that was different. Maybe this Jesus might just see him way up there in the tree. Isn't it a hope for us that maybe some days Jesus would just see us? So there up in the tree, he sees Jesus walking his way, and then Jesus gets to the tree and he says, get out of the tree, Zacchaeus. You can imagine the anxiety that might have been pulsing through him as he thought, I'm going to get it now. Boy, I've done some bad things and I'm about to hear about it. And the crowds were upset. They were upset because how dare this Jesus talk to someone so nasty and wasted, so swampy and gross, so sinful and mean. That's not the Jesus they wanted. They wanted perfect Jesus. They wanted Jesus that saw perfect in them. They wanted Jesus to not hang out with the people they didn't like. In fact, there's a great quote by Walter Brueggemann that goes a little like this. Jesus got in trouble because he saved people nobody thought could be saved. He saw nasty and wasted and saw beautiful and life-giving. And we, what are we? Do we see nasty and wasted, or do we see possibility and hope? When we look at people different from us, maybe the people that the world doesn't want or find charming, do we look at that and look for beauty and promise and hope? I think that's what teachers do every day of their career. Look at their classrooms and go, my Lord, help me. There is beauty and promise and hope here, whether they like it or not. And you persevere for what could be. For the students that's constantly in the principal's office, you look for what they could be, not for who they are in that moment. You believe in what they could be, what is yet to be seen. And then Walter Brueggemann says this, in fact, and this is the part that's going to hurt, so take an inhale. Jesus saved people that not many wanted to see saved. Now that one stings. Because in fact, it's no different. We are no different from the crowds of Zacchaeus' time, where we stand in the crowd and we look out upon those who probably have done wrong or those whose sins are clearly all over their face. And we say, not only can Jesus not save that person, they're lost. But also, I don't want to know a Jesus that would save that person. And we draw a line. N.T. Wright says that Jesus was crucified because of the company he kept at the table. Because he practiced wide open, messianic hospitality, meaning he was in charge of the guest list, and he invited people that the crowds thought couldn't and shouldn't be saved. He invited people to come to his table that made others uncomfortable there at that table. With that table in mind, Jesus says, Zacchaeus, you nasty, wasted man, get out of that tree. I'm coming to your house. What? And Zacchaeus looks down and he goes, you want to come to my house? Me? Jesus, I'm nasty and wasted. I've stolen from these people. I have done wrong. I have made my personal wealth on the backs of people who could have used that to feed and clothe their children. And you want to come to my house? Yep. And the crowds heard this. He wants to go to his house. Does he know what he's done to us? Does he know what he's taken from us? Yeah, I want to go to his house. And they go to Zacchaeus' house. And Zacchaeus opens the door and welcomes Jesus in, knowing that he's a sinner and knowing that there's something different about this Jesus. He doesn't run scared from truth. He instead opens the door to let truth in. And he says, welcome to my home. True messianic hospitality was Jesus saying, I want to be in your house. I want to stand in the nasty and wasted land and be with you. I want to go where nobody else wants to go, because that is where God longs to be. Hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house, Jesus said. So he hurried down and was happy. He was happy to welcome him. Happy. Are we happy to welcome people into our homes, into our lives, into our church, into our faith expressions? Are we happy to welcome those who are different from us? Are we happy to welcome our families and friends in church as much as we are happy to welcome our enemies? What about that person that has done you wrong? Would you open the door to let them in, to encounter the power of Christ? Or would you shut the door and say you shouldn't and couldn't be saved? All who saw it began to grumble. Can you imagine people grumbling? That's unheard of. What a horrible world they lived in. I'm so glad we've progressed past that. We've really evolved. A little snarky. All who saw it began to grumble and said, he has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner. Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half my possessions. And he begins to confess, I've taken from the poor. This is what I've done. He poured it all out. I'll pay it back 4 times as much. Then Jesus said something powerful to him. Today, remember when he was on the cross, he said, today you will be with me in heaven. And here at the table, in the presence of those loud, grumbling crowds, Jesus says, today, Zacchaeus, salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. He stood in the midst of a grumbling crowd and said, salvation can come to this person you don't like because, and for no other reason, Word of God said by Jesus, circle it, underline it, highlight it, draw a picture. He is a child of God. End of story. Case closed. Today salvation has come because this is a child of God. Confession has happened, and for the Son of Man, he said, came to seek out and to save the lost. Jesus' job wasn't to hang out with those people who have it figured out, because funny thing, Jesus didn't find any of those people. They didn't exist then, and they don't exist now. So we need to watch our self-righteousness when we stand in the part of the crowd that yells out, you shouldn't and couldn't be saved by my God. Beauty and the Beast is a great movie. Why does he become a beast? Do you remember? Because an old, poor, nasty, wasted, ugly woman, beggar woman, came to the door and asked for food and shelter and warmth, and he pushed her away. There was no hospitality for her. There was no room for her in his big giant castle or in his life, or he couldn't be bothered. And boy, the story goes, he became nasty and wasted. Because as he decided to turn her away, she became the embodiment of something beautiful, and he missed out. We miss out when we slam the door in the face of those we consider nasty and wasted. N.T. Wright said, remember, Jesus was crucified because of the company he kept. But Karl Barth, a theologian, said salvation is the most offensive thing Jesus does to save people. Don't save those people, save these people. Save the ones like me, that's easier. Not that one. It's offensive that Jesus could possibly love the person that just makes you mad. Jesus' love is just for me, and I'm perfect, and you are not. So you don't get Jesus' love because I'm mommy's favorite. Yeah? Same mentality. So salvation's offensive. We love forgiveness when we are in need of it, not so much when somebody gives it to our enemy. Salvation is God not only reaching out, but also specifically reaching down. Some of the lost don't know how lost they are until they get found. And I leave this thought here. Jesus was short, shorter than Zacchaeus. So short, in fact, Zacchaeus had to climb a tree to see Jesus because Jesus was so low in the crowd, so close to the ground that he could be with the nasty and wasted. That you had to get up in a tree to see him because he was down there with the discarded and those who were nasty and wasted. Brothers and sisters, Jesus got down low with the lost, and he looked the lost in the eyes. He didn't look down at them. He didn't stoop down to them. He looked them in the eyes and he says, "Be my guest at my Father's table. Be my guest." That is not our table. That belongs to God. But we are all sinners. We are all the beast in need of some forgiveness, in need of Jesus always. But today salvation has come to this house. Because we recognize that we are sinners. We recognize that we stand in the presence of saints and of God and of Jesus. And we recognize that like Zacchaeus, we can stand tall on a tree because of Jesus. We are no longer identified as nasty and wasted. We, my friends, can be the church where love and laughter and hospitality happen, and where crazy, unmeasured, messianic hospitality breaks out into song and dance and can lines, because that's heaven.